Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk, the most fact-driven, unbiased, true crime channel. Thanks for joining us. Tonight is Tuesday. That means we are live, and we're going to do our show for about an hour tonight, and then we will go directly to our Patreon members show. And if you haven't joined, become a Patreon, well, you should. Why? You get added benefits, because first I send you a bunch of cool stuff. But depending on, well, everybody gets a lot of cool stuff. And then depending on what level you are, you get even more cool stuff. And you get to call in as well. So not only do you get to continue the conversation that we're having here now, it continues, but you can call in and we get to have that kind of face-to-face. We've had some very, very interesting people over the last couple of years call in, and it is definitely worth it. So a lot of stuff going on this week in what's the word I'm looking for? In the true crime world. Well, welcome to reality as it relates to true crime. Things don't always go as planned. Things get delayed, and that's just the way it is, I guess. So first, what do we have? Let's talk about Lori Vallo and Chad Daybell. We had the hearing yesterday regarding Lori Vallo. And, you know, what really bugs me about the whole process there in Idaho is they seem to do so much of it off record. They then come back on the record and say what needs to be said, just for the record. I don't particularly like that, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So, before we get started, obviously, you know, we like to, behind the camera here, we have a couple of people that we couldn't do this show without. First, Frank, the hardest working man in show business, who makes everything work or not. Something's beeping. And then we have Julie as well, who she's willing to do just about anything. Hey, Julie, I think I need you to go to Salida. Okay. Just book a hotel room and take care of it. Okay. Make sure you send copious notes. Okay. Completely nails it. So they're behind the screen. And guess what? They like to get paid. And guess what my accountant says? My CPA says, keep all this stuff separate. Keep your law firm separate. Keep all that separate. So therefore, you know, they like to get paid. I assure you it's not going into some pocket for Scott Reich. So how do we do that? Well, obviously, people subscribe. They go to Patreon. We have sponsors, right? We have sponsors. And if you all buy something, then we get something. And that's good. So if you support Crime Talk, support our sponsors. Now, some people, I'm not exactly sure why, got all in a tizzy when we were doing this Crime Talk prep, okay? It's common sense. This doesn't mean that you're some wackadoo prepper ready for the world to end. No, it just simply means you're going to be prepared. It's like having that refrigerator full of food when you think the big storm's coming, and then guess what? The power goes out and you have no food left. What are you going to do? Hopefully you got some cans of soup in there. Natural disasters strike. So you have to take care of yourself. Be the responsible adult. Go to crimetalkprep.com. Listen, this stuff lasts for up to 25 years. You get 50% off plus free shipping. So give it a shot. $50. What? 50%. Oh, 50%. I meant $50 off. Sorry. All right. Let's see here. And also, and super chats, all those little things, they add up at the end of the month. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Let's talk about some crime. So the first segment we're going to talk about here, we got started a little late. But at least for the first 15 minutes, well, probably longer. But let's do a conversation about Lori Vallo and Chad Daybell. A lot of stuff happened this week. First, we had the hearing like we just briefly mentioned. And I had a judge when I was in the military. He liked to keep his record clean. And I mean in record, all the transcription. So what he would do is he would hold these informal conferences and say, all right, this is what we're going to discuss. What's the issue, etc. He'd resolve what everybody was going to say. And then he'd say, come on the record, we had a conversation off record, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what the objections were, etc. And it was rather, at the time I didn't know. I was just a young attorney. I was like, okay, that's the way the judge does it. But now I am a firm believer that you should have everything on the record. There shouldn't be informal conferences, maybe jury instruction, when you're just going over the fine, because you're going to make a record on those jury instructions. But it just kind of bugs me, I guess, so to speak, that's the way they do this, and everything seems to be resolved, and then they'll get other dates, when no one else is present. Sometimes the little nuances of a courtroom are just as important as, the substantive stuff that takes place. So that's a little frustrating, but that's the way it is. So what happened here? Well, the state hospital has sent a letter stating that they need more time to either continue to evaluate and or restore her to competency. It's unclear. Why? Because we don't get a copy of that. Now, I get that's going to be privileged, but once again, the substance of that conversation is not in the sense of, hey, she is not ready to come back to the Madison County Jail and to have, the court proceedings begin anew. But it's like not everything has to be secret. Yeah, there's privacy things, but the substance, the gist of it is they either A, need more time, or B, they're still in the process of restoring her to competency. The court, Judge Boyce, said that they need additional time, and the state hospital needs to prepare a status report. I think his exact words were a progress report to conform to the statute, basically stating why they're there, what they need to do, what time frame they think that it'll be done, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody seemed to object. Now, the other thing that took place was that Mark Means, and it wasn't televised, it was a closed proceeding as it relates to the waiver of speedy trial. We've talked about this. There is a time once speedy trial starts in most jurisdictions, and the way it is in Idaho there, is you have 6 months from the date that you go to arraignment, and you being the defendant. So once the defendant says not guilty, the state, a little magical trial clock starts. The state has 6 months from that date to get you to trial, okay? If they don't get you to trial, the case gets dismissed. Rarely does a case ever get dismissed on speedy trial grounds. Very, very rarely. Well, through his counsel, let's face it, has had Didn't that do that the other day too, last week or something?
Yeah.
Exactly why it happened. We could have prevented it, but we didn't. And well, sometimes that's the way it goes when you do these live shows. Sometimes they go absolutely flawless, and other times you just never know. So before we were so rudely interrupted by the Wi-Fi gods, we were talking about Chad Daybell. We were talking about the fact that he has agreed to waive speedy trial yet again. So the trial that was scheduled to begin in just a few months in November is going to get reset yet again. And I guess I completely understand the defense needs time to prepare to go through the discovery, etc. That's fine. We want everybody to have effective assistance of counsel so that there are no appellate issues or post-conviction issues regarding counsel's performance at trial. That makes complete sense. But let's face it, the discovery has not really changed that much, okay? And I have done many a homicide trial over the years where I said, okay, give me my time up front, maybe before the preliminary hearing so I can investigate, and let's go, okay? Let's go to trial, first setting. Frankly, I love it. Why? Because neither the court nor the prosecutors ever expect the defense to be ready on a first setting because they think, oh, the defense is going to do it. Some of my best results have become because of the fact that the prosecution wasn't ready. And, as I had to tell a judge a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, Judge, it's not my job to do theirs. I got my job, not mine, to tell them the weaknesses of their case or witnesses that they forgot. That's their job. They're big boys and girls. Let's go. So in reality, everybody gets all spun up about a homicide case. Most homicide cases are quite easy. It's just the potential consequences that gives everybody pause because, life in prison or possibly death if one is convicted and they're given the death penalty. So I get that. And sometimes, hey, you got nothing. Let's just wait it out. Maybe witnesses will disappear. There's something referred to as the big bus defense, okay? And the big bus defense really means that you've got nothing. And really that defense is you hope that all the witnesses get hit by a big bus. And I'm sure someone's going to be offended by that, okay? But when this is what you do on a daily basis, sometimes you have to have a bit of a sense of humor, okay? And that's the way you have to tell the client sometimes is, hey, man, we have no defense. This is terrible. This is bad. You're going to lose. The only thing that we have is the big bus defense. And obviously, you don't want any witnesses to get hit by a big bus. Certainly not any that have been driven by your client's family or anything like that. That's for sure. But you know what I'm saying. When you got nothing, you've got nothing. And so here we are. From the time that Lori Vallo gets arrested, over a year. Okay, since the indictments come out, really what has changed? The death related to Tammy Vallo? Okay, here's an autopsy report. Go talk to your experts. Clear dates. That's it. And that's what I don't like about the way Judge Boyce is running his courtroom there is because most of the time that should be done on the record in front of the open court. Judge, this is why we're asking for a continuance. This is what we're doing. Why do they think, and this is just a bigger thing, maybe it's just a frustration that I've seen lately, is that I don't know why everybody in government thinks everybody else is so stupid. You see that all the time. Oh, you wouldn't understand. You don't have all the information. Well, give it to me, and I'll try to figure it out. So it's just frustrating to me. The judge is thinking, oh, they don't need to tell us everything. I should be able to go sit in any courtroom, in any courthouse in America, and sit down and watch all the proceedings, any proceedings that I want, because you have a right to an open public trial. Well, that means the public gets to go in and watch as well. And when you start doing stuff behind back doors, it reduces the legitimacy of what is taking place. America, the citizens, the press, have a right to know what's going on. They have a right to know. And here it's my understanding they need an additional X number of days. They're going to need this. What, is that too insensitive? We can't find out about it. So I don't know. And, this Judge Boyce, I don't know him from Adam. I've never appeared from him. I've never practiced law in Idaho. Been very clear about that. He seems like a nice enough guy. Seems like a smart guy. but I'm kind of seeing like a Judge Ito effect coming in here. And if anybody knows what that means, was, the OJ trial. The OJ trial was originally scheduled for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it wound up taking like 8 months. This is not that complicated. Most homicides are not that complicated. It's an assault gone bad, right? Think about it. Somebody walks up to somebody, punches somebody in the nose. That's an assault. Our courts are going to say, well, it's not that complicated. We have an eyewitness. The witness said that, this is the person that did it. It's probably a misdemeanor case. Let's get him in. You got to start getting creative if you're asking for continuances in misdemeanor cases, in my opinion. Felonies aren't that much different. They just carry more penalties. It doesn't mean the prosecution has to prove anything greater. They have to prove that the defendant, on or about the date and place charged, did this with the requisite mental intent. Without any affirmative defenses if they're available, and did this, and so it is I don't know. It's a case that just needs to get on, and maybe it's just for my own selfish purposes we'd like it to get going, but at some point we got to get going. And we can't wait for Lori Vallo to get back on track. And frankly, I can't imagine why Mark Means would want Lori Vallo seated at the same defense table. I just can't imagine that. All right, let's take a quick recess here. Give us just a couple of seconds, and we'll be right back with you. Please go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched, and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. All right, welcome back. For those who've just joined us, my name is Scott Reich. This is Crime Talk. I'm a practicing criminal defense attorney here in the state of Colorado. And so when I talk about criminal cases, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what's taking place because that's what I have done primarily for the last 26 years. And so I'm giving my perspective on the Lori Vallo, Chad Daybell matter. Now, let's talk about what is going to take place tomorrow night. 48 Hours is going to have a series. What's in Chad Daybell's backyard? The mysteries of what's in his backyard. Well, let's just cut to the point, okay? Chad Daybell's family is going to say that they are standing behind him 100%. I get that. That's your family, okay? And there was some news that came out today regarding their opinion as related to their dad being accused of killing their mother, Tammy. And they say, although things look fishy, they don't believe that that is what took place. And they said that they were told that the cause of death was, and let's make sure we get it right, otherwise the pronunciation police will be out there, it's asphyxiation. Okay? And so the question is, well, how did that possibly happen? Did somebody, stop the breathing over the nose or mouth? Was there some medical condition that could have caused this? They didn't say strangulation. They said asphyxiation. And so, that's kind of what it comes down to, okay, I mean, was it a medical related issue? Did somebody stand over holding her mouth closed and her plugging her nose? Somebody put a pillow over her head, piece of plastic. Yeah, there's a whole lot of talk. Julie mentioned about her health, but what health issues did they have? I've seen reports that said she was a healthy woman, that she was out, training for marathons. So it's interesting. Do they want to help their dad? Absolutely. Okay. And let me tell you, and who knows whether Mr. Pryor told the family, don't do it, do it. I'm sure they feel like their dad is getting bombarded with negative press and they need somebody to say, we're here for you, Dad. We're standing behind you. Okay, that's the family. Okay. And even if the evidence comes out that he is convicted, then what does that really mean? They're still going to stand behind him, right? Because that's their family. Okay. And I have seen family over the years in cases completely ignore evidence that is so straightforward and so simple to understand, and the law relating to those facts so simple, but families will completely ignore it, act like it just doesn't exist, it doesn't matter, it's in God's hands, because they don't want it to be true. Okay. I've had people who have been accused of doing terrible things that have been given reasonable offers, but it would require them to plead guilty. And they refuse to do it. They would rather go to prison for the rest of their life rather than admit that they did something wrong. Illegal, to be more specific. So family can be a weird influencer for sure. I've had cases where you're like, wow, I'm not sure why the client doesn't want to do this, but this is their right to go to trial. And then we show up for trial the first day and family's outside saying, will you pray with us? God is your co-counsel. And it's like, oh, well, not to bring anybody down, but every time God has been co-counsel, God hasn't come through, okay? Because if that's what you're hanging your hat on, not going to work. And I hate to say it, it probably comes down to the attorney at hand on both sides. There usually are not miracles in court. Usually what you think is going to happen is going to happen. It's just the way it is. But you got to go through the process. But, sometimes those things make sense all of a sudden as to why nobody's going to enter a plea, why everybody ignores the facts, why everybody ignores the good offers. And I'm not saying there is one in the, Chad Daybell case, but family can be a weird influence on this. They're going to stand behind them. Things get real when those legal bills start coming in and you tell the family you're wasting the money, but you need to come up with a lot more money if you still want to continue to go through with this. And that's when families start getting a little more realistic sometimes. So, who knows how much Pryor has spent, but I'm sure whatever his retainer was up front, he's probably spent it just going through the discovery. What about hiring experts? It just, like I said, if they would just make the files in their entirety open to the public, that would be so much easier. Just let the people see. And we'll talk about this a little bit in our next segment when we talk about the Barry Morphew matter. But it's like, it's not the court's job to protect everyday people from the bad things that go on in the world. Okay? I think the world would be probably a little better place if people had a little bit of sense of reality of what actually takes place. Okay? Yes, I'm a criminal defense attorney. So when I tell you there are bad people in the world, scary people in the world, evil people in the world, I'm speaking from experience, okay? And some of the nicest people I've ever met have been my clients. And I have met pure evil, ladies and gentlemen. And I've mentioned this before. If people knew what took place in the world, they would literally lock themselves in their house and not come out. But you don't get it. I mean, who gets a newspaper these days that even has a police blotter on it anymore? Who gets the newspaper? I think I'm signed up for the Denver Post here, but that's usually like reading yesterday's news by the time even the electronic edition comes out. You don't get the news. What does your newscast have when you turn it on? Well, you got the big sports story, right? Oh, the Broncos are, starting their preseason game. Maybe a couple of, flavor of the month. There for a while it was drunk drivers, then it was con men, then it was, teachers sleeping with their students, and they run with that story. Then you got weather, and then sports again. Maybe a three-legged dog story in there to make everybody feel good. Oh, look, Larry, the three-legged dog, made it home. But they don't talk about anything of substance. They don't talk about anything related to what in the hell goes out there in the world. And if people knew, they would be like, okay, let's cut to the chase, right? And so these people that think, even in the Lori Vallo matter, think, oh, we can't release that to the public. Why not? Okay. And I think people, the sooner they realize this, okay, and I've had to make a living explaining to juries why somebody is, guilty or not guilty, depending on my role when I was a young prosecutor, and then as a defense attorney. And sometimes I have to go tell clients that you got to swallow a bitter pill, and guess what? You're going to prison. It's not a question of if, only how long. All right? And one thing I have learned is that, there may be a few stupid people in the world, but they usually don't wind up on juries. Okay? They don't. You cannot fool an entire jury. You can't. So you have to have a logical, coherent argument to explain to the jury where they can go back there and say, you know what? I think that Scott Reich guy, he's got something to say. And it makes sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, they're going to figure it out. All 12 people having to agree on something, they're going to figure it out and say, oh, that guy's full of BS. Okay? Same thing with clients. You can't BS clients. That's why you have to give clients, here's the discovery, here's an update, here's what we're going to do for strategy on this. This is why we're going to file this motion or why we're not going to file this particular motion. Because what good would it do to trick somebody into going to trial or to take a guilty plea? The truth is going to come out. So you might as well just tell it to them and be honest with them. All right. Whether the judge is trying to say, well, we don't want to taint the jury pool anymore. Well, when Frank and I jumped in CrimeTalk 1 and we flew out to Idaho Falls and then we drove up the road because the FBO there in Idaho Falls. Do you remember what the name of that FBO was, Frank? I should remember that. I can't. I just saw the bill the other day. The FBO. Aeromax. They're in Idaho Falls. So when you land in at an airport, they're called FBOs, fixed based operators. But you call ahead and you say, hey, guess what? I'm going to be landing. Can you have this for me? Usually it's a car. And if you ever flown private, Airmark. If you ever flown private, it's one of the best things ever. Okay, and not to sound like snob, but Frank, have you ever flown private before?
A couple of times, yeah.
A couple of times, right? Yeah. But what was the best thing about being able to go? Right, just not having to take your shoes off,
yes.
not having to go through security, And when you landed, it was, I think they drove the car. No, I guess we had to walk out to the car.
Yeah, we'll have to.
I guess we'll have to remember that at the evaluation, because sometimes they drive it up. When the lovely Miss Kristen and I landed the other day at a undisclosed location, they drove it up to us so they could throw the bags into the car. And then when we left, you just leave on your own time and you go. So yeah, so when we flew out there, let's face it, everybody knew what was going on. I asked, talk to the people generally. Hey, anybody know about this? Oh yeah, we've heard about that. Oh yeah. I mean, everybody knows about it, but not everybody's probably following as closely as we are, or people that watch this channel. So unless they say they absolutely cannot be fair, then so be it. But I think they'll be able to find people. I think we looked. There's 40,000 people in that particular county, Madison County, and I think they'll be able to find a jury. Now, if I was Chad Daybell, I would want that out of Idaho, or out of Rexburg as quickly as possible as well. Why? Let's face it. There's a university there in Rexburg. It's called BYU Rexburg. That's right, Brigham Young University. And the university, as I recall, was started in the, I think, late 1800s, if I remember correctly, by the founder. It's on the top of the hill, right, Frank? Remember, you could see, no matter where you could go, there's a temple, the Mormon temple, I think right on the top of the hill. And right next to that was the university. That place was spick and span. I'm telling you, it's like every city I've ever gone to, like if you go to Salt Lake City, the first thing that grabs you is, man, this is clean. Wow, it's so clean. And I wouldn't want to be, if I was Chad Daybell, basically trying to say that I'm starting some spin-off religion, cult, whatever you want to call it, in a town that, let's face it, looks to be predominantly Mormon, and it's probably not going off on some random tangent. I don't think I'd want to be a, defendant in that case there either. So yeah, I'm sure he wants to get out of town. I mean, maybe things have, come to light for Chad Daybell. But I'm telling you, it's, I don't know. It's interesting. The whole town is interesting in a good way. I like it. I mean, it looked like something out of a movie set, like Mayberry or something. There were people there. Remember these ladies riding their bikes with their children? Yes. I mean, it looked like a movie set for, calling central casting for All American City. Boom. Rexburg, Idaho. And I mean that in a good way, because it's the kind of place that you go and you think, man, if I had to raise kids again, I'd want my kids to be raised, somewhere, like this. I mean, it's just kind of clean and wholesome, and everybody probably knows everybody's name. I mean, it's just very nice. I can't imagine, it's like any jurisdiction. They've got issues, I'm sure, but, yeah, okay, the case is in Fremont County, but she was being held, I think, there in Madison, so not far distance. I think they actually go back and forth. I just saw that. Yeah. So, so that's where we are. But when we were there, I'm telling you, I mean, nice people, nice people, they get it. And they understand, don't know much about it. Just have to listen to the evidence. And, we'll have to wait and see. But the family, the kids, I get it. It's their dad. They've lost their mother. They want to hang on. So, all right. We can talk about that here a little bit more in a minute, but let's talk about, speaking of families supporting the father, seems to be a lot of men on trial these days for allegedly killing the death of their spouse. And we have one here in our own state. That's right, Barry Morphew. Once again, here's another case where the judge thinks that we just can't handle what the police put in the affidavit. And maybe he's trying to protect the police. I don't know. I mean, what else could they throw out in the affidavit that wasn't already presented at the preliminary hearing? It didn't come out at the preliminary hearing, so I mean, the judge has to make his determination based upon what was at the hearing. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that think that Barry Morphew is guilty. There are a lot of people that think, well, maybe he's not guilty. There's a lot of people that think maybe he's not innocent, i.e., maybe he did it, but the question is the government going to be able to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt? Well, Barry Morphew's daughters, they're 100% in Barry Morphew's court. And although I wasn't there, and sometimes what I said, what takes place in the courtroom when you're not on the record, the nuances are just as important as to what's said on the record. And Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, the daughters were clearly for Barry Morphew. Oh, yeah. She's indicating yes. Oh, yeah, I think was her exact response. And so, you know, the district attorneys have to consider that. Do you think a jury is going to consider that and say, wow, we've been here on the jury. Maybe we're here for a couple of weeks. We're hearing a bunch of stuff. But the daughters who have known them all of their lives, knew their mother, knew what kind of relationship they had, possibly, and yet they're standing behind the dad. Right? Now, don't get me wrong. From what I saw, I did not think that the evidence was truly overwhelming in the Barry Morphew case. I don't think I'm the only one who has said that, but that's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. However, do I think that the case is going to go forward? Yes, I do. Why? Because the legal standard is so low at this point that the case will more than likely have to go forward. The judge would have to be very bold to throw the case out. Now, I'm not saying I don't know enough about this judge. I've never appeared in front of this judge. I know he was a public defender before he became a judge, but that really doesn't mean anything. Sometimes, and if you talk amongst defense attorneys, they will tell you some of the worst judges on the bench were former public defenders and defense attorneys. You think, wow, that would be odd, right? No, it's not. I'm telling you, it is. And the general reason why I think that is, and this is just my opinion and nothing going out here to the judiciary in any way, but for somebody to want to become a judge, right? There's some people that this is their aspiration is to be a judge. From the first time, they're 6 years old and they decide they want to be a lawyer and they want to be a judge, and the only way to become a judge is to become a lawyer. And so they do that. And then how do you get there? You just don't become a judge, right? You have to go prove yourself. You have to become usually a trial lawyer of some type. Let's face it, you look at the resumes of most of the people that want to be judges, it's litigators. It's, civil litigators, trial attorneys on the, prosecutors and defense attorneys. Why? That makes sense. They're the ones that are down in the trenches. They're the ones that know the law, the rules of evidence that you have to use at the trial level. And then you start getting the appellate court judges. Well, sometimes the appellate court judges, whether it's, the Court of Appeals or Supreme Court, what do they wind up being oftentimes? Usually not the litigators, so to speak. They're more of the brainiacs. You get a lot of law professors at that particular level, or they've done some sort of appellate writing. They came out and they clerked for somebody and they thought the appellate law was so great, etc. And they do that. But the trial court judges, the people that become their defense attorneys most of the time, and I'm just saying this, and I'm not saying anything that most of my peer groups don't know. Most defense attorneys make terrible judges. I'll be honest with you. Because they've heard it all before. They're burned out. They want to go do something else. And oftentimes they don't know what else they want to go do. Oh, I know. I'll become a judge, right? And so what do you have to do when you become a judge? Well, you have to let your new friends, i.e. the judges, know that you're no longer friends with your old friends. Because if you look too chummy, it looks like you're going to be... But let's face it, the law is not exactly written for the defense attorney, so... the defense guy who's now a judge is probably just following the law. But what can you do? It is what it is. It's just my general experience. I think once you become a judge, a lot of people don't call balls and strikes. Well, if I was king, I would change all that. But I'm not. And I'm not naive enough to think that I'm actually going to do it. So old Barry, right? What are they going to do? I think the judge is ultimately going to bind the case over, but I don't think that they will find proof, evident, presumption great, which means that a bond will be required to be set. Well, then the question becomes, what is a reasonable bond on a homicide case? Well, I've had people held where there's been proof, evident, presumption great, and they obviously get no bond. I've had other people charged with first-degree murder, and I think the lowest bond I ever had set for that was $75,000, which was unfortunate because my client had no money. And, $75,000 might as well have been $7,500,000 because she didn't have the money. And so you just never know. And I've had cases where it's been proof, evident, presumption great, lost every motion, had lost every ruling in front of the judge, and the jury says not guilty. So you just never, ever know. But what would a reasonable bond be? I mean, what do you all think a reasonable bond would be? The fact that you are charged with murder, you're looking to spend the rest of your life in prison, even if it's not proof, evident, presumption great, what's enough to keep you here? They usually want people to post enough cash that if you flee the country, you're not going to have any more to be able to live. And if there's property, you're going to lose it, or somebody else is going to lose the property. So it really just depends. I would venture to guess that the court would probably impose a bond of somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. That's just my guess. And if the bond is $1 million, then, probably is not getting out. And then the interesting things start to happen, right? There's been talk that old Barry is cheap. Doesn't like to pay for garbage man come, so he dumps stuff in various trash bins and receptacles along the way, so I hear. He's going to start getting those attorney bills, right? And if he thought that, when you've got two attorneys probably billing anywhere between $300 to $500 an hour, and you have investigators sitting there, it's probably costing you a few $1,000s an hour, not only in court, but outside of court to do your case. And what happens if you didn't win? Certainly they've explained to them, to Barry and his family, it's a very low standard, but some people, you got to be careful. Attorneys have to be so careful not to overpromise. You just can't do it. If they, and I'm not saying they did, but I mean, no attorney of their experience would say, oh, this is a slam dunk, we're going to win this. They're not going to do that. Hopefully they've prepared him, said, hey, it's really low standard. The best we can probably do is probably get you out on bond. Yeah, in a perfect world, we win this thing, but the reality of it is that just doesn't happen. So, we'll have to see. We're working on a video. Well, actually, we just did the 10 reasons why Chad Daybell is guilty. I'm sorry. We just did the video of why Barry Morphew, excuse me, I misspoke, why Barry Morphew is guilty or not. We went through all the reasonings and, the scratches on his arms. Unless that investigator, and obviously I wasn't there, Julie, but did the defense attack the officer in any way as to his expertise in determining scratch marks on somebody's arm?
I mean, didn't really get into it, but yeah, I'm sure they would have. But the scratch thing, I didn't really get too much into.
Neither side really got into it, right?
But they were always saying, "Oh, you're an expert at this." Like,
yeah.
Jack, are you an expert at?
Yeah. Yeah, and see, this is the thing, and I've done several homicides throughout the state, and I'll just say smaller jurisdictions, okay? And I once had a preliminary hearing, where the deputy was testifying, the lead investigator was testifying as to the angle of the shot and basically why he thought it wasn't self-defense, but that it was just cold-blooded murder. And I would note the case was ultimately dismissed before trial. But when asking the sheriff how and what are his training and experience in bullet trajectory, his response was, well, I've hunted most of my life. Yep, I've hunted most of my life. Okay, and if you shoot, the bullet's going to go this particular way. You adjust for this. Okay, did you compensate if somebody was rushing forward? Have you considered that? No, they hadn't. But guess what? We did. We hired a forensic pathologist, and he said that the angle, given where the gun was placed, would be consistent with the decedent, the dead guy, charging at my female victim. They couldn't ignore that. Even the judge was like, I hope your expertise is more than, well, I've been a hunter all my life. So, that's the problem. A lot of people think they, read a couple of things on YouTube in law enforcement that they're suddenly experts in it. And for an officer to opine that, I saw scratch marks. Okay, scratch marks. Miss Winnie the other day jumped up on the backside of the lovely Miss Kristen, and her nail, she scraped her. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at that. You've got 3 big scrapes. I should have taken a picture of it and said, oh my gosh, do you think that Barry Morphew attacked her? Oh my God. No, the dog did. So, and some people are going to say, oh, Scott, you're just being a defense attorney, what have you, right? Well, you got to look at it like that. You got to be able to say, as a juror, is this, what's the word I'm looking for? Is this plausible or not? Okay. And I did a podcast the other day for a very experienced attorney, great prosecutor, was a talk show host, has a podcast, a guy by the name of Craig Silverman, and he has his lawyer lounge. And, we were talking, and I said, I wasn't there, but Miss Julie was down there, and she, was like, she went down there thinking, oh, he did it. Of course he did it. And, he maybe did. I don't know. The question is whether the government can prove it. But, Craig's comment was, as a former prosecutor, and this holds true not only for Barry Morphew, but it holds true for Lori Vallo, Chad Daybell. What are the odds, right? What are the odds that, Barry Morphew just happened to find out about an extramarital affair? What are the odds she just happened to disappear? What are the odds that the last person to see her, according to Barry Morphew, was him, right? What are the odds that when he's got this 15 minutes and his phone's on airplane mode, that he happened to go look at deer at like 5 a.m. in the morning, okay? And I get that. That's a very good closing argument. What are the odds? That theme could carry through from the beginning to the, obviously you want your theme to continue through. So what are the odds? What are the odds? What are the odds? And that makes absolute complete sense. And then I get it. And I think, God, my first thought is, geez, what kind of knucklehead story? Does this guy really think that people are going to believe that he was out looking at deer at 5 a.m. in the morning when he should be driving to Broomfield, Colorado to work on a job site? Apparently would have been dark, but that's not the strongest argument I have, unless it's absolutely completely covered with clouds. You're probably still going to have some light, even out there. I've spent enough time in the woods. It's not so pitch dark unless it's like, cloud cover or something. So you can maybe see them. And then you think, who's going to look at deer at that time of the morning? And then I think to myself, well, Scott, what do you do? I mean, have you driven out of your way to swing by an airport? Have you driven out of your way to say, I think we'll go a little, got a little time between court appearances. Maybe I'll drive over to the airport and just, grab a bite to eat where I can watch the airplanes. Why? Because that's what interests me, right? Do you have something where you can't pass up a particular store or something? Think about it. Everyone's got their little hobbies, no matter how ridiculous it may seem to the rest of the world. That's what interests them, right? He may be a hunting geek, and he may have actually been doing that. And guess what? It's not the prosecution's job to say, it's the prosecution's job to prove that he wasn't doing it, that he was lying. Now, Barry Morphew, and obviously if he did it, the truth is going to come out. The truth-seeking process called the jury system usually works pretty well. And so then the question becomes, is it going to work in this particular case? And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, well, I guess that's where the chips fall, so to speak, because that's on the prosecutors. They failed to prove their case. But he's probably going to go down as one of the dumber individuals for sure. I mean, 33 interviews, I think, is what he did with the police. 33. What an idiot. It's just ridiculous. 33. Why would you not go talk to an attorney? Unbelievable. And we have talked about this before. Anything you say can and will be used against you, right? So what have the police done? They befriend him. They go over, hey, Barry, why don't we come over with a couple of beers and some pizza and we'll hang out, get to know each other a little better. Yeah, you think they weren't trying to get this guy drunk or something? Think they were trying to befriend him? Hopefully, that he confesses to them. I mean, from the defense, they've got a little bit of a good theory going on here that these officers were not interested in finding the truth. They were interested in convicting Barry Morphew. And what are the lengths that they went to do it? They basically pretended to be his friend, his advocate, to try and find the truth, when in reality they were trying to have him make statements, go back through all of those statements and try to determine if he was lying and use that in court against him. And apparently one of the statements he made when he was arrested was, I thought you were my friend. How could you do this to me? Or words to that effect. Am I misstating that, Julie? I don't think I am. No. So he thought that the police were working kind of on his side trying to find it. So I don't know. It is going to be an interesting trial, and I think it will go to trial. But yeah, Barry Morphew did not do himself any favors until waiting until he was charged to retain counsel. All right, so we've talked quite a bit. Now let's go through and try to answer some questions here. Now, obviously, we're here on YouTube. Are we on Facebook tonight, Frank? I don't know. Oh, we're on Facebook too? Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're on Facebook as well. So everybody can watch us just about anywhere. And remember, you can also, if you can't watch us on Facebook, YouTube, don't have the time, you're in the car, guess what? You can get all of previous Crime Talk episodes, download them on your favorite app. So, all right, Stephanie, I was going to take your super chat question, but it said message retracted. Scott mentioned the Letitia stuff starting up again. Could you ask Scott to that again? Mama Pink, yes. Letitia Stalk, I think we're coming up not next week, but I think the week after. I have to double check for sure, but for the preliminary hearing. And obviously she's got new counsel, charged in regards to her stepson, Gannon Stalk. So it's just, we're going to have to see. Let's see here. Try to get through many of the questions here before we have to take off to our Patreon show. And remember, you can always come join us on the Patreon show as well. In fact, you can even call in, which is fun. Okay, I'm begging to get a comment from Scott regarding the DA Linda Stanley appearing on Profiling Evil and talking so unprofessionally. I'm not aware that she appeared on Profiling Evil. I'm surprised that the DA would do that, but that may that could be a sign that maybe things aren't going that well. I don't know, but what can you do? Who am I supposed to say? I don't know what she said. I don't know what she said. So I don't know if, like I said, I don't know her. She ran for DA. I don't even think she was a DA before this. I think maybe in the past, but I don't think she worked in that particular office. And, it seems like they're going to war a little bit, her office with the judiciary. There was one case, newspaper article where she wouldn't send her deputies to court. Normally there's a prosecutor in the court sets cases and what have you. And she wasn't going to send their prosecutors to court because they were just too busy and they didn't get enough office time. And I'm thinking, how many cases could you possibly have? We'll just have to see. Let's see. LC, BM is not the sharpest pencil in the box. He may think he is, hence the 33 chats with police. Absolutely. That is just beyond. Stephanie has a question. Scott, how do you feel about the Robert Durst trial? And Stephanie, you're probably going to have to fill me in because, once again, why is this trial taking so long? Why does everything in California take forever? And I guess, yes, it got delayed because of COVID, but even since they've been going, my God, I mean, the defendants on the stand, I think the last I saw, like 2 weeks or something. What? That's absurd. I think Mr. Durst, if he hasn't been found guilty already, will be. That's my prediction on that. Scott, have you ever participated in a televised trial? Yeah, I had one that was covered from start to finish by the ABC News, and they even got permission to tape the jury deliberations. I think if you type in the jury room, and it's the Laura Trujillo case, it's been a long time. That's for sure. A good at least 15 years or more. But yeah, I haven't had anything that's been televised. The news cycle these days, it used to be if there was a serious case, they've picked it up, they followed it from start to finish. Now the news cycle is so short. I mean, even the local news doesn't cover anything anymore. A quick little burst, 15, 30 seconds about a case. Even the Watts case, it didn't get that much play, so to speak. I mean, it got play, but nothing like it did on the internet, that's for sure. And even when they did, they usually got it wrong. I want to know if Scott, my 10th grader, won her class debate. a 748 student class where she came out first. Well, congratulations, factual breakdown. The kids and teachers said that she sounded like a lawyer. Oh, my goodness. 10th grader, that's good. That's good. You know, if you're thinking like a lawyer, really that's what law school is all about, okay? Law school is to think like a lawyer, and it's to look at the facts, look at the law, and come to a decision, removing the emotion from the facts, law, and the ultimate decision. Let the chips fall where they may. You may say, oh my gosh, that makes you sound like a cold-hearted person. No, that's called the law. The law is not supposed to take all that stuff into consideration when it makes the court is making their decision. And the defense and prosecutors, civil attorneys, defense attorneys on the defense side, they all have to make their analysis based upon the facts and the law, right? I remember when I was a young lieutenant going through the basic school, and they said, you know, you're going to be out there, you're going to be leading Marines, the emotions are going to be high, and it's your job to remove yourself from the emotion of the battle so that, you know, like if one of your guys gets hurt, you don't go and you know, wipe out a village or something in revenge for that. Like, hey, you know, you got to follow the rules. That was your job. And that stuck with me, and particularly because that's what lawyers are supposed to do, to be there to remove everyone else from the emotion of the battle. The prosecutors, they've got the emotion of the victim. They've got the emotion of the city, the county, the entire constituents in their jurisdiction that want justice and they want it yesterday. And why can't they get this done? And then you got the defense attorney who's got his family, the defendant's family, the defendant who, you know, I'm innocent. Why are they not letting me go? Blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I say, well, you're not innocent because let me tell you what you did. Okay. And you did it all wrong. And that sounds horrible, but that's what you have to do, right? As a defense attorney, my hardest job is to tell people, yeah, what you want to say is no defense under the law. It doesn't exist, right? So you have to be able to really do that. So that's what's thinking like a lawyer. So I'm glad Factual Breakdown, your 10th grader, is thinking like that. Maybe sometimes we need a few more lawyers in the world, although that's kind of a scary thought because you don't really want everybody thinking like a lawyer, right? Hopefully have a few people in there with a little bit of common sense. That's for sure. And sometimes, you know, lawyers don't always get it right. They don't. And I'm telling you, at the end of the day, I will take a jury over a judge and a prosecutor any day. And I'm telling you, we had a trial last week where if you show the jury an injustice, the jury will correct it. And I'm telling you, they found in less than an hour my client not guilty of 13 counts. And he gave me permission to talk about the case. And I just haven't had time, been kind of running around here. But he also gave me permission to show the video of the contact. And, well, at least we know 12 of those jurors, all of them unanimously, were absolutely offended by the police officer's conduct and the fact that the district attorney basically defended it and acted like it was no big deal. This happens all the time, ladies and gentlemen. Sure, police lie, but, you know, the ends justify the means. That's really what their argument was. Okay, I'm not really sure. I think it's ridiculous that she did that. Oh, we're referring to the district attorney trying to change the public's opinion. It's disgusting. It's called conflict of interest. Well, I wouldn't know if it's necessarily a conflict of interest, but depending on what she said, how she said it, it could clearly be, for lack of a better term, a grievable offense. Prosecutors and defense attorneys aren't supposed to go and say something that could basically taint a potential jury pool. I don't know what she said. I don't know how she said it, but I guess I'm going to have to go listen. Profiling Evil. We've had him on our show a couple of times. We've been on his show a couple of times. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, and I get it. I mean, he's he's an experienced investigator. I think he started in Utah. Did some cases out there with like some child sex thing, cult stuff. A lot of that stuff going on these days. I just don't get it. But he'll tell you, hey, like, I'm a cop. But at the end of the day, it's the type of thing where it's funny. We chat. We probably agree on more than we disagree on because we get it. We know what generally, human nature, right? It's like when you're picking a jury. You got to understand human nature. It's true. Let's see here. Durst, yeah, he's been questioned over 2 weeks now. I mean, come on. Like, he said, yeah, I mean, Durst, and I've seen this. He admitted a line pursuing from his previous trial for murder. He admitted it didn't sound good. I mean, like, wrap it up. For the love of God. I think the cross-examination has taken the longest. The prosecutor's apparently going through every statement the guy ever made. And, like, what are you doing, man? Let's see. Music lawyers are really good. Metalhead, I like that. Let's see here. I'm going through these questions here real quick. Make sure I answer all the... I wish I could answer each and every one. Scott, she didn't say anything about the case specifically at all. You need to watch it. I will. I'll have to. And I said I didn't see that. E wants to know, is Scott Peterson getting a new trial? It begs the question whether Scott Peterson, yeah. What's the issue? What's the word I'm looking for? He may have already got his break by getting life without parole. But the whole thing with the juror, it just doesn't pass the smell test. So I don't know what the judge will do. I think it would be interesting. I'm not sure if they'd get the same. Who knows if they'd get the same result? But I don't know. The judge is going to have a hearing. So I guess, typical lawyer answer, talking like a lawyer, is that we'll have to wait and see. It really depends on what comes out at the trial. Okay, and everyone's saying she did nothing wrong. She didn't say anything unethical, which is good. She knew her boundaries. Good. I said, I haven't seen it. I don't know. That's why I said, she can talk. She can talk about whatever she wants, but she shouldn't talk about the case specifically other than saying we're pursuing it and we're going to litigate it in the courtroom. Which is good. We want everybody to do that in public service, right? To do the right thing. And discuss, it may come back to bite her. Biscuits and Gravy thinks that Stanley's going on to Mike King's YouTube channel and discussing the case may come back to bite her in the end. Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure the defense is going to raise it at some point. If there was something said, I haven't watched it. I don't know. Be surprised, people. There's only so many hours in the day, and I can only watch so many YouTube channels as the day goes on. Metalhead. I live in LA. They make everything drama. Yeah, LA is not real. Southern California, not real. Okay? My daughter went to school in Southern California. The fakest place in the world. I was so glad. Couldn't wait for her to get out of California. It just makes no sense. There were people there that were buying their kids Range Rovers, but yet they were taking student loans to pay for their kids' school, right? And I remember my daughter so-and-so got a Range Rover for her birthday. I'm like, well, it's obvious that her parents love her more than I love you because I'm not buying you a Range Rover, right? And then you find out like they're taking student loans, but they're buying their kid a Range Rover. Only in Southern California would they do that, or maybe Miami, I guess. But it's not real, right? Everything about Southern California is fake in my humble opinion. So we'll see. All right. Wow. Can you believe that? Already over an hour. Jeez, man. We always blow past that. It's so easy. We should do this every night. Just kidding. See the look that Julie made. All right. Hey, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Can't believe time goes by so fast. Please continue the conversation on Patreon. If you're not a member, become one. It doesn't cost much. We'll send you the link and you can join us and even call in and we can talk about all these things. And maybe I can try to listen in the break here of what Miss Stanley stated on the YouTube channel. Just not sure why she would do that. I really don't know. But I don't know. I mean, if I wouldn't go on anywhere to talk about, not even here, a case that's ongoing. I wouldn't even bring it up. Wouldn't mention. I would tell you I can't talk about it, right? It's over. I can tell you something about it, but not prior to that. But people, they're adults. They make their own decisions. We'll have to wait and see. They drive Bentleys, but they get their money from the government. Leave. It's bad. Yes. Yeah, everyone's a little whiny tonight. I don't know what it is. Must be something in the air, that's for sure. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. Check it out. Download it on your local podcast so that you can, your favorite podcast, so you can listen in the car. So have a great night. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Crime Talk.